I am Kimberly Hayes de Muga.
And I'm Amanda Day.
And you're listening to the Fundraising HayDay podcast,
where we cover the how-tos of grants and fundraising.
And how we can all of us, please, Lord, all of us need to do a better job of changing the world through philanthropy and any other means possible. Hi, hello.
Absolutely. Special thanks to our Patreon subscribers who help make this podcast possible. To join this amazing community with monthly playlists, a book club, and wide open mistakes were made episodes, as well as monthly musings from Kimberly, visit www.patreon.com/fundraising HayDay. And remember, that's HayDay, because we had a long-time listener finally realize that it's HayDay because it's Kimberly Hayes and Amanda Day. So yes, HayDay is our names smooshed together.
You know, y'all, it's okay if you don't get, just remember the name. If you don't remember the origin story, it's Fundraising HayDay.
Kimberly and I are still booking speaking engagements for the second half of 2026, as well as into 2027. We love planning ahead, so come on and join us. Whether you're looking for someone to lead a webinar, keynote a conference, provide tailored training, in person, online, whatever it is, we are here for you.
We like talking about all the things, right? We like sharing our experiences. And frankly, I always learn something from every time we are privileged enough to be with folks in some sort of learning environment. We can talk about all aspects of grant writing. We can talk about all aspects of prospect, research, grant management, ethics. We might even have a game. We have all the things. We've got leadership. We've got sustainability. We've got a lot to share, and we would love to share it with you. If you are like, hey, that sounds really great, Kimberly, but I need some visual details. I hear you. I hear. All you got to do is go to our website. Once again, HayDay Services, HayDay services.com, or you can email us. And the email is hello at what, you might ask? Hello at HayDayServices.com, and we can talk all about it.
Yep. Well, you mentioned ethics, and which is a good segue into our actual topic today. We're going to talk about commission-based fees for grant writers.
It's almost like you wrote a segue. What?
I know. It's like we know what we're doing here some mornings. So we're going to talk about why we don't get paid through commission.
And why, if you do, please reconsider. And why, if someone asks you to do it, please don't. Okay?
Y'all, we are so very excited to introduce our listeners to the first Season 9 sponsor of the Fundraising HayDay podcast. Grant Guru is the world's largest aggregator of grants and funding, and this incredible prospect research tool has made its way all the way from Australia to the United States. It's a searchable database that is updated daily, and it is so user-friendly. We're joined today by Adrian Spencer, co-founder and director of Grant Guru, to learn more about this incredible product with a mini-series during the first 12 episodes of this season.
So, Adrian, just like Amanda and me, I feel like we're all singing from the same page in the songbook, with Grant Guru being a believer in not only being eligible for the grants that you apply for, but finding those grants that are truly the right matches. So you're not just running around chasing money, you're being very, very strategic about the grant search. So we'd love to hear more about that and how Grant Guru matches organizations with the most competitive grants. That's just a big issue across the board, I think, especially if you're new to grants.
Right. That's so true. And we all know that grant writing, it's time consuming and it can be emotionally draining. You know, let's be honest, none of us went into grant writing to become rich. We do it because we love it, but wasting time on applications, that are not going to be successful, it's just soul destroying, which is why you need to confirm eligibility before you apply. And you should also know your chances of success before you start. So to that end, we structure all of our grant entries to clearly help you understand this upfront. You can easily assess, are you eligible? Do you have alignment with the grant maker's aim? Is the fit there? Are there any restrictions that you need to know about upfront? And how do you stack up against the merit criteria, which ultimately is how you're going to be marked or assessed? So we list all of that information clearly up front, and we make it quick and easy to do a self-assessment.
Nice. Find out more about this fantastic new resource for grant seekers. Visit grantguru.com/US. You get access to a user-friendly search engine, email alerts, grants calendar, customizable grant reports, and so much more.
And as an added bonus, Grant Guru is providing our listeners with 20% off their subscription. So when you go to make your purchase, use the discount code HayDay963. That's HayDay 963.
So if you have, especially, I would say more so as a consultant, right? That's where I have gotten asked that question. But if you are into writing grants at all, or if someone is approaching you to write grants for them, invariably, you will run into someone who said, well, I'm really just looking to have you write the grant first, and then we'll pay you if we get the grant. And they're like thinking that that's like the right thing, right? For them, that makes really good business sense. And you may be thinking, oh, well, so what you're saying, sir, madam person, is if I write this grant for $100,000, because we're going to use development lady math, if I write this grant for $100,000, you're going to pay me 10%. Okay, if I get the grant, that sounds good, right, Amanda?
Yeah, why not $10,000 to write a grant?
I mean, there are a lot of reasons that that's not a good idea. So we're gonna get into them. Okay, this is why we're here. This is what we're doing.
Yeah. So first of all, the thing about this is an ethical quandary, right? It's not illegal to be paid commission-based fees, but it's a gray area when it comes to ethics, and we're going to walk you through all of that. So Kimberly and I have been long time, like I think near 20 years for both of us, members of the Grant Professionals Association. It's a membership association for grant professionals. They have what they call the GPA Code of Ethics. It was last updated June 10th, 2023. So it's been around a lot longer than that, but they continue to update it to make sure, everything is current. But within the Code of Ethics, there is a compensation section. Let me get that out right. And we'll put a link in the show notes so you can check it all out. But the compensation section states a couple of different things. First of all, it says that members shall work for a salary, wage, or fee.
Yep.
But pro bono work is allowed, so there's nothing wrong with that. Then members may accept performance-based compensation such as bonuses, provided such bonuses are in accordance with prevailing practices within the members' own organizations and are not based on a percentage of grant monies. So it could be like if your team, like maybe you've completed a capital campaign and there's a bonus for that, or there's, maybe some other metrics that you were able to get some programs up and running that were never running before, and there's a bonus for that. That could possibly be some examples. So it's not tied to just you brought in $1 million, so here's your 10% bonus, right? It also says that members shall not accept or pay a finder's fee, a commission, or percentage compensation based on grants, and shall take care to discourage organizations from making such payments. And then last but not least, compensation should not be written into the grant unless allowed by the funder. And yes, there are a handful. In all my years, I've been writing grants for almost 25 years now. I've only seen one grant. It's the Assistance to Firefighters grant that will allow you to pay, but they cap the amount of money that it is. I can't remember what it is these days, but it's not a lot of money. But they will allow you to pay a small amount to a grant writer. So it does exist. But again, I've been doing this for 25 years, and I've seen one grant do it. Have you ever seen a grant that allows for that payment, Kimberly?
Yes, I actually had a client be able to be reimbursed for my fee, which I was paid for. Fee for service while writing the grant. The grant was, it was one of those grants where I was like, this is righteously done. This is not, oh, look at me. I mean, the program was tight, meeting all the criteria: rural healthcare, telehealth, underserved area, data, collaboration, all the things.
Yeah.
And the grant did not get funded at first. And I was like, oh, 6 months later, the funding agency said, we actually want to fund this grant. And then the folks that had already paid me, because it was fee for service, they were like, oh my gosh, can you just resend the invoice, and we're gonna get paid for your time. So it was a super happy ending. But that was once, and I've been writing grants for blah, blah, years now. So it does exist. It does exist, but it's super uncommon. But, and again, it showed, I think I feel the need to just go into that brief rant we talked about before we started recording. Is that okay?
We knew rants were coming with this episode.
I mean, and look, I've got some details from another organization around codes of ethics, and it's important. But I'm also like, y'all, first of all, for the record, I would like to state there's nothing wrong with many industries that function on a commission basis. Yeah. Many sales jobs, right? Mm-hmm. Super lucrative. Real estate, nothing wrong with that, because that's the way it's structured and it's above board and makes sense. But for grants, not only is it very rare that you can write in the grant writer's services into the grant itself, because why? Most grants pay for work to be done, or they reimburse you per the grant agreement for work that you did in the grant cycle.
Yeah. Not what you did 6 months ago to prepare for it.
Exactly. So even, if it's not written into the grant, if it's not allowable or allocable in the grant, the grantees got to spend the money where they said they're going to spend the money. And if it wasn't approved or written into the grant, thou shalt receive 10% for thine services, or whatever legal that may be, then you're not going to, then it goes, they're already misspending their funds, Mary. They're already misspending their funds. So I think it's just, there's logic to it. Yes, it's goes against the ethics of different organizations, including the Association of Fundraising Professionals, which encompasses, major donors, estate planners, grant professionals, event planners, all the things, development directors, chief development officers, you get the picture. They also amended their ethics, a code of ethics in 2023, and this information about this sort of compensation that we're talking about, commission-based, appears under their fair, equitable, and transparent compensation practices. So I'm just going to read it. We believe fundraisers should receive fair and equitable compensation for the work they do in support of organizational missions. In accordance, members are expected to support fair and equitable compensation, which may include bonuses or merit pay in line with organizational practices, but may never be based on percentage of funds raised. Decline reviving. I'm sorry, I've lost my ability to read. One moment, please. Decline receiving or paying finder's fees, commissions, or compensation based on percentage of funds raised. Refrain from offering or accepting payments or special considerations for the purpose of influencing the selection of product and services. So, let's don't bribe people, or so besides the fact that two very well-respected professional organizations say, hey, it's not a good idea, I'm telling you, hey, it's not even usually legal. And it also demonstrates, if someone's trying hard to talk you into this, it's demonstrating that they don't understand how grants work. So if they don't understand how grants work, chances are you're not going to be able to get a lot of the information you may need to have a competitive grant proposal anyway. And for a federal grant proposal, my Lord in heaven, you could put, for a big, ginormous one, like those old school Department of Education grants, and one day if the department still exists, I'm sure they will have grants again, that could easily be like 80, 100 pages of narrative and a bajillion attachments. I don't know. I've team worked on some of those, but you're going to at least spend like 50 or 60 hours putting stuff together, at least.
Yeah. I've seen in upwards of 150 hours necessary to complete a federal proposal. So
yeah, a big one, not a renewal or something like that, or like your federal assistance to firefighters. That's a lot more straightforward. But so So as a grant professional, you're gonna just go, oh, I'm just gonna do 100 hours of work and hope I get paid. I mean, that's one way to run your business, but I don't know about that. And it's a touchy topic with me, and but also, when you go to see your doctor and you are privileged and fortunate enough to have some sort of decent insurance, you don't get they don't bill you for your copay if you recover from the flu, right? You pay it at the time of service.
Mm-hmm.
I think that our healthcare system is messed up. Yes. Was it a kind of a messy metaphor? Maybe. But you it's fee for service. And I think, Amanda, later on you're going to be talking about different ways to look at that. But it's I don't know. It's I've never engaged in it, and I don't have professional respect for people that do, or people that tell you it's okay. And that is that. Now you may be saying, well, what about if you're just not a member of those organizations, right? Those associations where you have so carefully, and in my case, so badly, read out the actual items in their codes, respective codes of ethics. So if you're just not a member of that organization, then you're not bound by that ethical consideration. Even so, in the example I just gave, you're really you're not setting yourself necessarily up for success. Would that it would be true. For years, my husband's like, because he's not a member in these associations, right? He's just like, girl, could you that grant was $25 million. Can they just pay you a percentage? How about just 1%? How about, I'm like, nah, they can't. That's not what we have to go. That's not how it works. And, anyway, he's a teacher. I think he was gunning for some early retirement. And I don't blame him,
Right.
because that would have been just some rank funding. That would have been a lovely paycheck for mama, but it was not to be. But as we just used in our example of federal grant preparation, the price may not be equitable to the amount of time, energy, and effort needed to develop the grant proposal. If you want to flip it and reverse it, and if you know that musical clue, just
flip it.
hello at HayDayServices.com. Let me know, because I'm taking it way back. And also sort of a slightly R-rated reference that I stand behind. So you can, if you reverse that scenario, let's go back to the $100,000 grant again, because development lady math. The grant professional would get 10% if ethics were out the window and it was allowable and allocable, which it isn't. That means that $90,000 now goes. If it was a $100,000 project to provide affordable housing for seniors, then that money, unless the organization whops into with sort of operating dollars to make up the difference, it's not really going to work out that well. Now, if they choose to pay you 10 grand for putting together a $100,000 proposal and it's in your contract, and they pay you maybe half at the beginning, half when the grant is submitted, kind of thing, that's between you and them. But if you're taking it out of the grant dollars that are restricted for a certain purpose, you're actually diminishing the effects that could have. Yeah. And as we have said, majority of the time funders won't pay the cost of a grant writer. In many cases, they might pay for grant administration, grant management, but that's a different thing, right? Mm-hmm. And you may or may not be the person providing those services. And getting back to the $25 million grant, I was on a team that brought that in. If I'd gotten 10% of that, I wouldn't be here. I think we would be on the northern coast of Spain and enjoying some fine rainy weather and greenery. Did I really do $250,000 worth of work to get that grant in? Capitalism run amok. I just kind of putting some numbers to it, and not every grant is guaranteed, right? No. Amanda, we actually had someone contact us indirectly looking for some assistance, and we have our fee as our fee. And they were like, "Oh, do you charge that because you guarantee that the grant will come in?" I'm like, "No, it's because we're worth it and we have lots of experience, and this may not be the right fit." And
Yeah.
that's okay too. That is 100% okay. But
Yeah.
no grant should be guaranteed. And anybody who is like, "I'll contract with you if you guarantee that your retainer fee will be covered within the first 3 months." If I were you, I would just not sign that contract. I mean, but or not, because
Yeah.
grants can take up to 6 months. If you are starting from scratch, it may be 3 months before you send out a grant. It may be 6 months from the time those grants come out. You know what I mean? It may, or at least a month, and you're sending a grant and then you're waiting.
Yeah.
So anyway, it's just a lot of that comes from organizations that they're not trying to do necessarily something shady, but they have no understanding or perhaps willingness to learn how grants work. And
Yes.
I think it's on us as grant pros to educate, and it's on me. As if I'm working with a potential client, if they won't budge from that, then we're not the right fit,
Yeah.
because I can't guarantee that, and I
Yeah.
don't think you can either, Amanda.
No. Well, and I think often the people who are suggesting will pay you a percentage of the grant, even if they're thinking we'll pay it out of our own funds, not the grant. They just don't know how it works. And, a lot of people just assume the bigger the dollar amount request, that the more the work is, which oftentimes that's true, right? Like a $5,000 LOI to a small family foundation is going to be a lot less work than a $2 million federal proposal, just because of the nature of those two. However, like I've submitted $1 million grant to a state agency. Actually, it was both were state agency grants. One was for $1 million. The other one was for $100,000. The $100,000 request took me twice as long because they ask a ton more for more information and a ton of attachments, whereas the other one was pretty straightforward, right? So even though you can kind of think, yes, there is going to be more work the bigger, but that's not always the case. So, if you went by that, you'd be like, wait a minute, I just worked a ton for a little bit of money. And on this grant, I, worked barely anything, but made a ton of money. It's not, again, it's not fair and equitable to you or the fund or the client that you're working with. So that for me is a really big reason is, you want to look out for both yourself and your client.
Yeah.
And so the commission-based fee is not the way to do it. So,
And if they're unable to pay a fee, a reasonable fee, fair market value for maybe where you live, if you're working with local agencies, or if you're doing work based on your experience or the prevailing market in the area where the agency is that you are wanting to contract with. I mean, if you're choosing, I mean, if they're not able to meet fair market value, and I'm sure there are people who are just worth $1,000 an hour out there. I've never met them, and I'm not one of them, so I can't speak to that. But if they're unable to meet your fair market value fee, then that tells me that there may not be able to handle larger scale grants, right?
yeah,
Because most grants from the state and federal level, and also maybe at the county level too, most public funding is on a reimbursement basis, right? You got to do the work first, send in all your paperwork, and then you'll get reimbursed for it. And so that's telling me that if that's the road they want to go down, but they can't afford grant writing services that are reasonably and fair market value price up front, then they probably don't have the wherewithal to handle that kind of work. You know what I mean? You know what I'm getting at, Amanda? Does that
oh
make
yeah,
sense?
yeah, makes total sense.
So, so yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
So look,
and
oh,
yeah.
yes, I was going to say, so if you're like, okay, great, I can't charge commission, so how do I get paid? Well, you do have a
Exactly.
couple of options, right? So you could do project-based fees. And this, I think, is especially helpful if you're new to grants. I don't know that I would jump into this route because you probably don't quite know like how much time and effort and energy things take. But if you've been doing this a while, like I know if you came to me and said, Amanda, can you write this grant for me? I already know. well, that one's a doozy because it includes this, and this, and it's going to take me, I'm going to need weeks of time. I'm going to need to talk to your subject matter experts. I'm going to need you to collect this. It's going to be a pain in the butt factor because you're going to have to do X, Y, and Z. Like I could already, you've got all these things. You like my pain in the butt factor?
So Amanda has the pain in the butt factor. I have the PETA analysis, which is the pain in the ass analysis. Yeah. So you need to factor that in. I'm just saying.
That in. So, but anyway, if you know all of that, then you can be like, hey, this kind of grant, I charge X amount. This type of grant, I charge X amount, right? So that is certainly an option. Then you also have hourly rates where you can just say, hey, I charge this much an hour. When I started out, I had a lot of hourly rate clients. I would usually give them, if they were hiring me, say, to write one particular grant only, I would say, okay, this is my hourly rate, but I won't exceed 80 hours, or I won't.
Yeah.
So they're not like, oh my gosh, is it going to take her 2 hours or 300, right? So I'd give them kind of a max. Or if it was a client that I was signing on to do a lot of work for over the course of, say, 6 months or a year, we would have talk through like, what's your, first of all, what's your fundraising goal, but also how much can you afford a month backing into this? And so I would kind of have an average number of hours I would work a month. So we just, a lot of it's conversations of figuring out what works for you, what works for the client. Another option that a lot of people do, especially if you have longtime clients, is retainer fees, where you charge a flat fee a month. And usually you have over the course of either each month you're expected to hit so many deliverables, or over the course of the year you're supposed to, whether it's, hey, over the course of the next year I'm writing 5 federal grants for you, or every month I'm writing 2 small family foundation grants for you for this price, or whatever it is, right? Depending on what services you're offering. So, but those are 3 ways. So project-based fees, hourly rates, or retainers. Some people will tell you, oh my gosh, don't ever do hourly. You've got to do this. You've got to do that. Here's Kimberly and I's thinking: when you're a consultant, you do what works for you and your client, right? And if you're getting paid a fair wage and it's the money you need to be able to live the life you're looking to lead, you do what works for you and your client. So.
Also, the more experienced you are, probably the faster you are.
Yes.
Because I spent many years, I spent more than 7 years in a nonprofit that was a grindhouse when it came to getting out grants. So I learned to work quickly. Do good work, but work quickly, and devise systems to make it work. So for me to charge hourly, I would probably get the short end of the stick sometimes if you're thinking about it, because I can zap through things. However, if you have a certain level of experience, then it's not just paying for the service, right? It's not like paying someone to cut your grass, right? Where it's like, well, you could just agree on that's probably not the best metaphor, but or paying somebody to cut down a tree.
Yeah.
So if you're paying by the, it's going to take 5 hours. What if you're working with, I don't know if they call them arborists. There's a special certification. We've had multiple trees.
Arborist.
An arborist who is able to get up, get down, get it done, and has the experience and wherewithal and certification so that the job actually only takes 2 hours instead of 4 with local yokel and a chainsaw. Do you know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
You're paying for that level of expertise, and also for the tree to not crush your house. I mean,
yes.
So while I won't prevent a house from being crushed, Amanda brings, and if you're an experienced grant writer, you bring years of experience, perhaps familiarity with the funder, et cetera, and all those things. I would recommend should go into that if you're looking at how you want to charge. If you're just getting started, or you're really looking for one-offs, then maybe an hourly rate or a flat fee based on the complexity of the RFP could be great ways to start.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So what should you say if you are asked to pay this way? What should you say? Amanda, did you want to say something else?
Oh, no, I was going to say that's what we're talking about next.
So if someone says, oh, well, this is the only way we can do it. Okay. If I had a red flag, I'll just wave my red turtleneck. Ooh, red flag. You can explain, you can provide copies of the code of ethics. Mm-hmm. I know that there's some folks who do that with their contracts, to make sure. I think that's a good idea. It's against the code of ethics of my professional association. Here's a copy. it's not going to be in your best interest, because if you're wanting to, and generally it's been my experience that most people who suggest this are wanting to pay you out of the grant.
Yeah.
That is what they really want. That's really not in their best interest, because that's not the way grants work, unless in those rare instances the fee is still is written in there, in which case I would say, well, then go ahead and pay me, and then that will be your reimbursement, right? When the grant comes in, you could do that in your accounting and show what happened, just like you were if you were a person getting reimbursed for travel costs, for example. That's how that could work. I consider it a way to educate up in that moment, or maybe it's not even educate up, maybe it's just a peer-to-peer discussion, right, where you're just like, this is really not how grants work. This is really not in anyone's best interest. It goes against code of ethics, and more importantly, this is not the way I work, or it's not the way you work. And then it's okay to go, it sounds like this is just not going to be the best fit.
Yeah.
Sounds like this is just, and just, that's it, not going to be the best fit. And step away from it, in my opinion, because I don't think that it's going to lead to the kind of career compensation that may be in your best interest, and certainly not in their best interest. And the funder ain't gonna like it.
Yep. And again, I think that most, because I've had a couple of clients that I've met with for the first time that's what they ask, like, oh, so is this how this works? I think for the most part, they just generally don't know. And they know other types of workers, like we mentioned, real estate agents and different things like that, that's how they charge. So it makes sense to them. And so every time I've explained, no, and here's why, they've all been, okay, well, how should, what does work? And so I explain my fee structures and how we work it. And I'm always like, and again, I don't, if you just need me to write this one grant, I will do that for you. If you want a long term, because you've got a lot of goals going on, then we can work that too. And again, that's also another thing that's up to you. If you don't want to take one-off clients that just have one grant, you don't have to. If you're like, this is how I do it, this is how I charge, this is what you get in return, and it's just a negotiation. And I will tell you, if you're like me, uncomfortable having money conversations, which that was really hard for me to begin with, because that was things you just don't talk about out loud. But if you're a consultant charging people, you need to be able to talk about what you charge and why. So the more you do it, the easier it gets.
And this is not like buying a car. Like, or, it's like, oh, the person who puts out the first number loses their power, or whatever, macho man bullshit thing is going on in that negotiation. I can see the merit in that in some situations, but not here. And I'm like, if I'm trying to figure out if we're going to be a good fit, whether it's for training services or whatever, Amanda, you've heard me. I'm like, hey, when we provided this service in the last 6 months, it's been in the range of X to Y. Is that feasible based on this, just our preliminary discussion, or are we going to be too far? I mean, or words to that effect. I just want to get it out there, because if our project is a $5,000 project and they have a $500 budget, let's just have a nice day and see. And if we know of someone, or if their budget is so small that it's they're probably not going to be able to find anybody or whatever, if we can refer, fine. If we can't, hey, thanks, it's okay. It's it just saves so much. It just saves so much time. And honestly, I think people appreciate that too. So I think if you're thinking of going out on your own, or you've been out for a while as a consultant, or as a part of it, maybe you're a partnership, like Amanda and I have a partnership LLC. That's how we work. Being comfortable talking about this, one, educating, and then if people do not want to believe your education, then let's don't engage with them. But if they go, oh, how does it work? Then let's see if we can work something out. But also be comfortable talking about what your fee is. And when you're just starting out, maybe hourly is going to be easier. You may not know whether you prefer hourly, retainer, or project-based fees until you get into it. And you may need to experience this to figure it out. And you can go back and forth. There's some clients now where I am a flat rate, and there's some where I have retainer. In fact, I just signed a contract for like interim work while they're rebuilding their grants team, where it's a retainer for a certain amount of hours each week. you're not limited to one particular thing, but in my opinion, you are limited when it comes to it. I firmly believe it's fee for service. It is not percentage based or commission work.
And let me tell you, if you've got someone who's arguing with you and thinks there's nothing wrong with commission based and is trying to tell you you're wrong, that's when you can just say, you know what, we can agree to disagree, but this is against my code of ethics and I'm not touching that. And that's okay to walk away from whoever that organization is that's trying to convince you that there's nothing wrong with it, because it is. If you are a member of these organizations, especially.
Don't let them gaslight you. It's really, it's not the way. It's not the way.
So. Okay.
So go ahead, Amanda.
Well, I was just going to say, I think this is something that seems to, like, you hear about it for a while, like on LinkedIn and other social media places or at conferences, and then you don't talk about it for a few years and it kind of comes up again. And so there have been some rumblings on things. So we just thought, it's time we talked about this topic, because it's important to understand, especially if you're new to particularly the consulting game, because that's where it really comes into play. If you're an employee, you're not usually getting paid a percentage. It's usually a salary and should be.
And unless there's a bonus structure that's built in that doesn't come from a grant, that's different, y'all. Yes. And you know what? If you are lucky enough to work for a place that you have your base salary, and then if everybody meets their revenue goals, everybody gets a bonus or whatever, that's cool, but it's not coming out of a grant.
Yeah. There you go.
Yeah. Thanks again to today's sponsor, Grant Guru. If you want to learn more about this incredible new tool to the grant prospect research market, visit grantguru.com/US. You'll find the link in our show notes.
And remember, they are providing a 20% off discount code on your subscription. So when you go to make your purchase, enter the code HayDay963. That's HayDay 963.
So we're just happy to address difficult topics. I'm always happy to rant about things that I believe in strongly. So hoping that you got some ways to talk about this with potential clients, right? And ways to address it head on instead of going, well, that's just not right. It's like evidence. We've got our show notes. We've got our rantiness to back us up. And we've got two very well-respected professional associations that back us up.
Always send somebody this podcast episode too. So we're always so honored that you join us each and not every week, every other week that we host the podcast. So thanks for being with us today. Please join us in 2 weeks where we are going to be talking about building funder relationships. So we'll see you then.
Bye.